everyone. So I wanted to tell the story of sort of my life about how I always felt like I never really fit in anywhere. And I'm starting to believe that it's because I'm always putting myself in these places where society says I traditionally shouldn't belong. So for the first 18 years of my life, I was defined as a low-income, at-risk youth. And my family lived under the poverty line, which in the United States means we live with an income of around $20,000 for a family of 3 like mine. And so that means low income. And my family was also the typical definition of dysfunctional. And beyond that, our community didn't have very many resources either. And so we were at risk. And so I'm going to tell a story of how my life, my childhood, was not only defined by these 2 terms, low income and at risk, but also how my life continues to be defined and affected by those terms. One second. All right. So I always hid the fact that we were poor when I was in school, because my mom said if I told anyone, we might actually get taken away by child services. So when we didn't have electric or the water was out, I didn't tell anyone. And that time we lived a whole summer without utilities in the hot Arkansas summer. I didn't tell anyone. When we were using the bathroom in woods, when we were cooking our food over candles or over campfires, I didn't tell anyone. And I held it all inside because I loved my family and I didn't want to get taken away. The whole time, like, every time I would get invited over to my friend's house, it was like an escape. I was super excited. I was like, I'm going to be in the air conditioning. I was excited to be in like these normal houses. And I was excited to see what these successful and educated parents, what they talked about and how they treated their kids. It was just an escape for me. But I never returned the favor, actually. My whole childhood, I never invited anyone over to my house because I was embarrassed. And there was only this one time that I invited friends over. It was my 10th birthday, and I invited 2 friends over. So besides the fact that you're supposed to have more than 2 friends at your birthday party, besides that fact, and the fact that my mom had made like a bazillion of those like little plastic favor bags, that was super embarrassing. But besides that, one of the 2 actually said offhand, she was just like, my house is bigger than your house. And it was this super innocent 3rd grade comment that actually set a precedent for me never inviting anyone over at my house ever again because I felt so ashamed about it. I was like, damn, my family's poor. This is not fair. And so that's like sort of the setup of my life. I was born in Ohio and raised in Arkansas, and I have 2 brothers, one older and one younger. They're actually both half-brothers. We have the same mom, but all of us have different dads. And then there's my mom. She had me when she was 22. She had my older brother when she was 19. And there's my father. He left my family before I was born, and didn't really say why. Nobody ever told me why, actually. I actually met him when I was 23, and I was like really curious to figure out like hey, why'd you leave? But even then, he still didn't have really an answer. He just he kind of didn't know. He was like, I don't know. So that was disappointing to figure that out. So those first 18 years, I grew up with 5 different stepdads, all of whom were addicted to drugs and abusive, and eventually gone out of my family's life. And it came to the worst with one of them in particular. When I was in high school, we had moved to Pennsylvania. My mom had disappeared for a few months and left my brother and I at our grandparents' house. And we didn't know where she was. But when she came back, she suggested, like, why don't we go to the grocery store? So my brother and I were like really excited to see our mom, and we're like, follow her anywhere. So we got in the van and heading to the grocery store, and they said that we didn't stop at the grocery store. we just kept driving. And we just drove all the way to Pennsylvania, where that night we met our new stepdad, the newest in the line of stepdads. We moved in that night, and the next week we started in a new school. But it didn't actually last that long. I guess my mom sort of thought she was just gonna come and like take us away to our new life, but actually it didn't end up that way. One night I was in my room, which I shared with his 6-year-old daughter, which was kind of fun because she had dollhouses. But and I heard this gurgling, muffled sound, and it was the weirdest sound I'd heard ever. And I was just like, what is that? So I followed it, and when I got there, what I found was this man, my new stepdad, was strangling my mom on the couch in the living room. And I didn't know what to do at first, obviously, but I could only focus on one thing, and that was my mom's, the look in my mom's eyes. It was this look of complete terror, and what I took away from that moment was, no, Erica, don't do anything, because you can't help this. There's nothing you can do about this. This is the way that things are. But I've never actually reacted to anything in my life that way, so my initial reaction was, whoa, I need to go help my mom. So I knew that I couldn't take this guy myself, so I ran out the door, and I ran to our neighbor, and I'm knocking on the door, like, help me, like, somebody call 911. Thankfully, somebody was there, and they opened the door. They looked very scared, like, who is this crazy person? And they didn't know who we were, because we just arrived. But they started dialing, and they're calling, and I'm just standing on the porch, looking at the house, wondering what's going on in there. Like, is my mom okay? And I was afraid he was going to come out also and maybe try to stop me from, like, getting help. And I was also thinking, all of this sort of at the same time, do I have to go back to that house tonight? Is this how my family is going to have to live and keep living? But thankfully and luckily, the cops arrived pretty soon after that. I was actually shocked how quickly it happened. They got there and they took him away for a few hours and put him in a detox tank because he was super drunk as well. And between the hours of around 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., my family, my brother, my mom, and I, we loaded up our van and we moved back to Ohio to our grandparents where we had previously been living. But it wasn't too long before, we moved again. We moved back down to Arkansas, and I continued to see my mom's relationships cycle over and over exactly like that, even to today. And that look that I saw in her eyes, it was shockingly painful because I had only seen it once before in my life. It was back in Arkansas. I was getting punished for something that I hadn't done, which happened a lot actually. And it was my first stepdad, and our punishment was to go choose a board off of the wall, bend over and touch our toes, and just stay there as many times as he thought was the right number for whatever thing we had done. And so as I'm standing there, touching my toes, my mom is right in front of me on the couch, and I was used to this, so I was like, damn it, I'm just standing here, do this, I didn't do this is unfair. So I already thought it was unfair, but he's hitting, and it got to a point where I'm just like, this is actually hurting, this is too much, and I'm crying, but the thing that's hurting me the most is that I knew I didn't deserve that, and my mom, just the person who's supposed to be your protector in life, is sitting right there on the couch, and it's that look of complete despair. There's nothing she can do, there's nothing to be done about this moment, and I knew, I could see it in her eye, somewhere in there, she wanted to do something. But it was just this frozen moment where she's like, I can't do anything, I'm sorry. And I just, at that moment, and that was sort of the start of me losing hope for my family, and what was going on. But the positive of this story is that I always had a refuge throughout my whole time in Arkansas, in that sort of life. I loved going to school. It was, once again, air conditioning. It was food, it was all of these friends who seemed to have better lives than me, and it was so happy at school. I loved it. I always knew it was obvious. Like, school is the way out of poverty. Like, this is what you do. I looked around at my friends, and they're like doctors and lawyers and small business owners. I'm like, that's what you do. You just go to college and you like keep doing school. And so I did that. But my little brother, it was not so obvious to him. He didn't understand like that concept. I think his trajectory was totally different than mine. He hated school. He decided to stop going to school. He would skip classes. He started doing drugs, hanging out with the wrong people, getting in trouble, going to jail. He dropped out of school for good. He got his girlfriend pregnant at 19, and they decided to get married. They split up, and now, his first child is 7 years old now, and she doesn't have a father because he abandoned them. Because split up, and she's now in elementary school. I asked somebody down home, like, how's she doing? And they said, she's really sweet, but she always has this sad look, She's just, like, always sad. And she sent me a picture, and sure enough, she, like, looks exactly like my brother, and totally cute, but it was, like, heart-wrenching. This picture she sent me was the same dejected, removed look that I remember seeing on my brother's face so often when we were kids. And, she's just one of 3 kids he now has who are abandoned from their father. He moved away, he had 2 more kids from 2 more women, and left them all. So it's this vicious cycle that keeps happening. And I have been thinking about labels and what they mean. And my whole family started out being low income and at risk. But it has always felt to me like I was the only one trying to break that cycle. So I want to read the letter that changed my life and stopped that cycle for me. It's dated December 9th, 2004. I'll just read the opening, not the whole thing. Dear Erica, congratulations. I'm very pleased to inform you that you have been accepted for admission to the Stern School of Business of New York University. It is a particular pleasure to welcome you to the NYU community as an early decision candidate. And, all along I knew that it was going to be education that was going to save me. And it was the moment I received that letter is the most important moment of my life. I remember the exact moment. I was in my house, or trailer, whatever, and I heard the mailman coming, and I heard the rocks, like, crackling, because I lived in a dirt road. I heard the rocks crackling under his tire, and I looked outside, and it was him, and I'm like, all right, just wait till he puts his stuff in the mailbox, and I'm waiting, he drives off, I sling the door open, I run out, and I fling open the mailbox. And it was the same scene that had happened for days, except for this day. The most amazing thing happened. The thing I'd been waiting for so long. This big white envelope from NYU was addressed to me. And, we're sitting at Sloan where getting an acceptance letter from Stern probably doesn't mean a lot. But for me, that was the happiest moment of my life. And it meant so much to me. It meant that I was going to be jumping out of this really, really hard hole that I had been living in, and that my struggle was over. And I don't know why I knew that, but that's what I felt. And it's been more than a decade now since I received that letter. And I thought by now, all the things I went through, I would start to feel comfortable in my shoes, that I would feel good about myself and where I've come to, that I could feel proud, and that the accolades I've achieved over this time would make me feel better about my childhood. But I wanted to share my story because I still struggle with those labels that I started life with, being low income and at risk, and all the things that I had to overcome. And I wanted to share that because I know a lot of people at Sloan were born with labels too that they struggle with. So yeah, I'm thinking about labels and whether we define them or they define us. And the thing I'm leaving Sloan with is, how do I want to define myself? Because it still is a question for me. Like, what am I? I was trying to figure out how to end this. So I wanted to end with a quote that I have stuck on my mirror at home. Every morning I wake up, I see this. And it wasn't until I was composing this talk that I realized why it resonates with me so much and why every single word in it matters to me. It's a quote by Rumi, who's a 13th century poet. And it's simply, live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. Live life as if everything's rigged in your favor. And I think it's right. I think that's exactly what it took for me to be here, is this ridiculous thought and like this ridiculous belief that the entire world is just conspiring for me. And I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't know if I'll ever find that place I truly belong, but all I know is that I'm closer to it. And this Sloan journey has been a part of that. So thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for listening.